let's go ahead and get this started. Good afternoon to all the bots in the chat. You gotta love bots. Even if no one else watches you, the bots are watching and scraping, and they're basically attempting to steal your stuff for the AIs. This is the new future we have created. I should be heard. Okay, it's on. I mean, you have a name like 20. I mean, which I guess is, better. Basically, a bot would have to be 10 instead of 20. So by your ability to process the number 2, you must not be a bot. That's one thing I was going to do, but I was going to say about setting it up. So I'm going to basically setting up the emote wall. I did not. But hello to everyone out there. This is... That's how you know I'm not a bot. Hi, look, I got transitions working too. Hello, basically to everyone out there. I am Mark Delacruz, product lead for LoreLink, and okay, our chat has decided to go places. That's interesting. So basically, hello to the chat who is currently escaping their box. It's terrifying. They're starting to escape. They're in the walls. Captions are here too. Yay! Good for captions. Okay. This is Mark Delacruz, product lead for LoreLink, a Game Masters Online toolkit. We are basically streaming here. This is the second stream this week. In case you missed it, we are expanding our streaming schedule a little bit here in the month of January as we push for Twitch affiliate. So we're going to be streaming a little bit more. Basically, we're just looking in general to increase our streaming, offering some different perspectives on planning, on games, and things like that. So let us know what you think. If there's something interesting that you bring up the microphone or bring down the music. Yes, the music. I was wondering if the music was a little loud. Okay, that should be a little bit better. Let me know if that is acceptable. Hey, Wolf Mom. Actually, definitely down on the music. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, the music is just mostly meant to be a background. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second here, but just to wrap up, so we are doing a couple of planning sessions here. So what the schedule is going to look like, and you can check our Blue Sky account, which you may have seen on that starting soon screen. If you're basically interested, you don't know or basically I'm sure 20 will post something of what our Blue Sky schedule is, our Blue Sky link is in the chat. There it is. Awesome. Basically to keep track of when we are streaming, but the current schedule is basically that I'll be streaming today, and then basically next Monday, Mike will continue his series on streaming on basically putting together a Pathfinder 2 campaign, pre-made campaign, and then I will stream again next Tuesday on continuing out this campaign, which will be a Blades in the Dark game, and then the following Friday, you'll actually see this game played live. That one's going to be at a slightly different time. It's going to be on a Friday. It'll start at noon, and we'll go out throughout most of the afternoon. So if you have the ability to watch streams during the day, put us on for background noise and see what happens with this crazy group as they attempt to become criminals and see how well they succeed. So all that to say, let's get started on what we're doing here today. So today we are planning out a Blades in the Dark game. Oh, I forgot to mention, we are trying for affiliate. So if you are happening to be watching and listening at some point, and you're like, wow, these people sound cool, and I want to hear more from them, and I'd like to take money from Jeff Bezos' pocket, you can help us out by giving us a follow. The follows are free, but basically we get enough of them, and we stream enough of them, the great Twitch platform moderators come down and they bless us with the ability to be affiliates. And that means the fact that we get to give you emotes and cool things like that. We can also give out subs and things like that. You can use your Amazon Prime sub and take money directly from Jeff Bezos' pocketbooks and put it into our hands. You could unfollow us again, but you don't think that help. Probably not. It might just confuse things. I mean, you get to see the cool "Welcome to the D&D World" little logo thing we have, but outside of that, actually, do I have alerts? I do have alerts. Alerts should be working. But outside of that, it wouldn't do us any good. You need to go and create 20 sock puppets. Wait, don't do that. Don't do that. It's fine. It's fine. We will make it there. I mean, we will make it there on our own merit. Darn it. We will be cool people one day. In any case, so basically business stuff out of the way. Now onto the fun stuff of games and things like that. So we're doing Blades in the Dark. As I mentioned that a couple of times, and it's right there in that title down below me. What that is Blades in the Dark is a role-playing game. It's basically, the book looks like that, in case you're wondering if I have the book. The book looks like that. It is by John Harper. And it's basically, it is a loosely, basically, I don't want to say loosely because it is definitively based on another game series known as Apocalypse World. Which was kind of an interesting story in itself, and the fact that it was just kind of it wasn't meant to be a D&D type overall D20 system, but it was published in such a way that allowed others to take some of the rules, and a lot of people liked how the rules worked and were implemented, and so a lot of them essentially took bits and pieces that they liked and modified it and created interesting and new systems, and then those systems have become the basis for other games and things like that. And it's kind of become a neat little ecosystem on its own. I'm saying that, and the immediate thought that is coming to mind is a news story that basically, we'll do a brief bit of news. There was a news story that went around recently in tabletop role-playing circles where an author decided that since D&D was flailing, because of the fact that WotC has made series of mistakes. Let's just call them mistakes. If you're interested in them, you can look them up. There are 600 videos on YouTube which will gleefully tell you all the mistakes that WotC has made. But since D&D was flailing, they had decided that meant the TTRPG golden age was ending, and we were just split. Basically, all of these different random games don't have the same base as D&D, and therefore we're just going to be splintering an existing base and not adding anything new to the anything new, and that would basically be the downfall of the golden age of TTRPGs that we have enjoyed as long as 5th Ed was on top of the marketplace. That is, of course, silly and bunk. Basically, if you check Kickstarter, you will see hundreds of small RPGs popping up. Basically, some of which are 5th Ed based, some of which are not. Basically, Critical Role and Dimension 20. Basically, the reason why people watch those games isn't just because of the fact that they're playing D&D. They're playing D&D because those shows have made D&D interesting and fun. And as those shows move on and new ones emerge, they will play different games, and basically those games will also get popular and spread like wildfire among the community. Will we see a down ramping in it? Definitely. I mean, the pandemic basically definitely caused an upsurge in a lot of things that were social gathering but could be done remotely and distantly, and those things are going to go down as other forms of social activities come back up. Everything comes in cycles and waves, and basically you're going to see that, but the fact that D&D is having problems does not spell the end of the TTRPG. Basically gameplay and the systems, basically the success of things like Apocalypse World and basically how it spun off things like Blades in the Dark and how that spun off all of its games. Basically Pathfinder, Cthulhu, all of those systems which are spinning off their own unique systems. Like I'm looking off in this direction because that in this direction there are a ton of games on shelves, basically some of which are D&D based and some of which are Basically, like things like GURPS. I'm old enough to remember when GURPS was the big system during the time when second ed D&D went away, and GURPS was everything, and everybody made something for GURPS, and then eventually GURPS had its downfall and is much smaller. And what do you know? Something else rose up. D&D third ed emerged from the shadows, emerged from its shadows, and came back and took over for a while. And so there are so many different systems and things like that out there to explore. And all of that to say, don't let any of them, don't let anybody talking like that sort of stuff discourage you from playing, getting into, or even creating your own RPG system. It's basically, it is a, I'm only playing a few D&D sessions for here. I feel like 50 sessions for other systems. Yes, exactly. There's so much out there. So don't let that look basically get you stop you from getting started doing your own thing or exploring the other systems out there. They are, yes, they are not D&D, but that does not make them any less good. For example, the one system that we're talking about here, Blades in the Dark, is basically an interesting kind of twist on D&D right from the start. It doesn't start in the same usual kind of high fantasy place that D&D starts from. It starts from a more dark fantasy, more Victorian, basically type, Victorian fantasy type place. It is basically the summary, which basically the book uses to describe itself, and I kind of quoted at basically it is, where is that quote that they use? Is it at the beginning of the book? I think it's. You're in a haunted Victorian-era city trapped inside a wall of lightning powered by demon blood. And basically, it depends what type of person you are, whether or not that appeals to you. But it's the idea of the fact that in this, you're existing in a world where basically things are a little bit dirtier, things are a little bit grimier, things are a little bit more oppressive. And that gives the opportunities for the players to maybe feel like they're making a little bit more of a change in a world like that. It's kind of interesting when you look at a D&D type world. Your characters are all powerful and things like that, but there's always a little bit of, it's kind of like Marvel syndrome in terms of, you're basically like, if you're playing a character, if you're playing a low level, or you're reading about a low level hero in a Marvel universe, or watching a TV show, what are basically, you're always asking like, oh, but the thing is that Superman or the Avengers or someone else like that could always show up and fix this, and basically these people taking care of it are just kind of, it's only happening because it's unemployment. So this is going to do the first episode of the second season of Marvel's What If. That reminds me, I need to watch that. I know they got into the Victorian stuff as well. That's always fun. But basically in terms of, but what effect are you really having in a world where Elminster could always, basically if things got too bad, Elminster could always show up. In Dragonlance, you have basically the big heroes there who are always taking care of, basically taking care of things. In Pathfinder, you have the Iconics roaming around, and basically to lesser extents, you had Pathfinder Society and things like that. If things were really bad, the Pathfinder Society eventually would show up, right? And so your characters, there's a little bit of, no matter how powerful you are, there's always something bigger. In a world like this where things are a little bit smaller stakes, it's more the idea of the fact that you are actually making an impact in this world. You're actually here to do something. And so basically, but the core conceit of it is that you are you're starting up your own gang, your own crew. You're going, basically, you and a group of like-minded individuals have decided to make a name for yourself in this city, a place for yourself in this city. And you've set yourselves up, you have yourself a hideaway, you have yourself situations, you have yourself all set up and ready to go, and then the adventure starts and you kind of see where things go. Basically, Basically, do you take over more? Basically, you have mechanics for taking over territory. Do you basically have you have scores and heists and contacts and enemies. And so it's the idea of the fact that you're trying to make yourself slightly, basically a little bit, basically carve yourself out a section of the city that's your own. So, all that to say, I'm going to run a one shot in this world. And so what I thought I would basically we're going to basically this is going to be a little bit rougher of a first session, as I am going to kind of start off by, well, basically you will see the fact that I'm literally starting off on a button for. I have zoomed in. Basically, I've zoomed in too much, and the button is just at the bottom of the screen for me. Hang on. There we go. Create new campaign. I'm trying basically after watching Mike's stream yesterday, which if you missed it is available on YouTube to watch, where he talked about running Pathfinder Second Ed adventure in here. I noticed that he did a little bit more zoomed in, which made writing a little bit more legible. So I figured I'd give that a try. Ah, exactly. Yeet, not quite yeet, more like yet. Could be yeti. So basically what I'm going to do in this session is I'm going to kind of start roughing together the rough outlines of what this campaign will look like. Sorry, I shouldn't call out my moderators who are doing a great job. Basically, much appreciated. That reminds me, I should double check, make sure. Okay, there we go. There, this game. I was double check. I realized, I should actually have the Twitch chat up. Though, okay, you're just okay. But the preview image for the live on the basically on the YouTube page is like way at the beginning of the stream, and so it's just vaguely disconcerting to be like, wait a second here, what am I streaming? In any case, so what I am doing with this, as my scattershot brain bounces all over the place, is as I can focus, I'm going to kind of start roughing this game out from where I would start if I was basically being like, oh, okay, let's run a one-shot Blades in the Dark game. Now, this is going to have a slightly different feel than what if you were running a campaign game for Blades in the Dark, because one of the major conceits with Blades in the Dark and in Apocalypse World in general is the idea that you are collaborating on this game. You are basically, most of the decisions are made in agreement between the GM and the player. It's less mandated by the GM. So basically, unlike Mike's game yesterday, which was much more of the GM has a definitive story that they're telling. And basically, even in that one, there's obviously choices. We talked, basically, he talked through the hex map and basically exploring and things like that. This is meant to be much more open. Basically, it's meant to be here. Basically, we talk about how the gang is formed. We talk about how the player characters got together, and then we start to explore what a score would look like in. Basically, what a score would look like, what this gang wants to accomplish, and the GM could lead opportunities to them by having people show up, or they can have the players go out and seek their own opportunities, being like, "Hey, I think we need some more money. We need some cash. We need some more territory." They're running more of the cult angle. They're like, "We need to do something." We need to do some recruiting or something like that, or we need to take on this rival gang. That we have these projects we've been working on, and it's meant to be much more of a collaborative effort. Basically, so much so, basically to the point of even basically with rolling, one of the characteristics of this system is that the GM doesn't call for rolls. Pathfinder, a lot of times, something will happen, and the players will roll whatever the GM asks for. So the players will declare an action, like, I want to check for traps. I want to hit this guy. I want to basically, I want to do this or this. And the GM's like, great, that's a stealth roll. That's a perception check. That's an investigation check. And basically, the GM will respond, and the player will roll whatever the GM has asked for, and then give them that result. Blades in the Dark basically the base system is that the players are going to basically tell you what they want to do, and they're going to name the role, and the GM is going to respond with how effective and how dangerous that role is. Those two things in particular. It is the. Let me actually look at the correct terms. It is the position and the effect are the two terms that they use. Position, basically is, are you in a control position? Is this a relatively low risk situation? Basically, you have most of the cards here, and you're rolling only because there's some variability in how this could play out. Or are you playing this as basically, or is this a risky situation, which is the default? It could succeed, it could fail. Or is this or are you in a desperate situation where you're throwing something out there that you don't think has a chance to succeed, but it's the best option you've got? So basically, that's the you're swinging a haymaker at the guard, because even though the fact that you're not the fighter of the group, you're not the cutter of the group as they're called. You're just swinging because you're hoping that this will distract him long enough for your friend to get in position or something like that. Then the effect is, okay, based on what you're doing, how effective is that going to be? Is it going to be, is it limited effect? Meaning, it's really not going to do that much good. Is it a standard effect? Basically meaning, okay, it's got a decent chance of accomplishing probably what you wanted. Or a great effect, which is, okay, yeah, this will definitely improve the situation if you pull this off. And those are the things that the GM establishes or lets the players know. And then the players can decide, they're like, oh, okay. The examples they tend to give are, I want to persuade this person to do something for me. Okay, cool. There is a command skill. You could roll that. The player could be like, yeah, but I don't really think that command is what's going to work here. I don't think that my character has a basically intimidating presence. I don't think he'd listen to me unless I decked him. And you're like, oh, what? And you're like, I want to use skirmish to resolve this. And so that allows you to basically the player can determine, you're like, oh, okay, wow, that's a really risky move, but if you knock this guy down, it's going to have a huge effect because these people are all aggressive brutes who believe that basically the strongest guy is the one who should be leading. So yeah, it'll have a great effect, but it's a desperate move because basically it's incredibly risky. If this goes wrong and basically this doesn't come off right, they're coming after you. Basically, one way or this is a great effect. One way or another, this is going to cause things to change. But basically, and they're like, oh, okay, maybe desperate. Okay, that seems a little high. Except they'll change, and that even comes down to things like dealing with damage and things like that. They talk about the fact that the GM should describe the consequence in detail, because then the player gets to decide whether or not they take that consequence or they try to resist it. So you paint it to them in the worst possible light, and then let them know this is what can happen. Basically, he is going to rub you. Basically, here's the consequence. You failed that roll terribly. He blocks your blow and is going to run you through. Basically, his blade will go through your chest and out your back. Oh, actually, no, I'm going to resist that. Basically, I would rather take stress than the actual physical trauma of, well, being dead. And again, it's that back and forth conversation. And so that kind of comes down into this section here. Now, I know the fact that I have a couple of my, I know I have a couple of the players in the chat, because a couple of the moderators are in here. And so if they want to chime in as I am building this out, But normally you would have more of a conversation with your players over building this out. But because this is a one-shot, I'm going to pull things in from other sources and other places and kind of basically show you my mindset on how I'm wanting to build this campaign, basically this one-shot out, in a way that is still going to give my players freedom and things like that. If they normally think I'm here for taking risks. Then this kid told me you think I pay attention. It's fine. It's fine. If you don't pay attention, then you don't get spoiled for anything. Then everything will be a surprise. It's great. But so I'm here to plan out this one shot, which means that I'm going to take some shortcuts and things like that. I'm going to do things a little bit faster and a little bit more making my own decisions than necessarily consulting other players. Normally, this would be a great thing for the session 0, which basically I talked about a couple of times ago when I was talking about basically the previous game I planned on stream, and now I've completely forgotten what that is. I have basically New Year's has happened between here and then, Christmas has happened between now and then. But whichever game system that was back in December, Doctor Who, yes, Doctor Who. Session 0s we're discussing that because you're establishing what type of game you're playing. Thank you. But basically, this is definitely session 0 type material where you sit down and you're establishing what type of game you're making. So what's this? What basically? What do we want? Let's give a name for this. This could change. But I've got some rough ideas that I've come up with. So, where's it? Dark. Let's call this "We All Wear Masks." Sure, that sounds ominous enough. So, and we'll get more into the description and introduction as we keep going here. So, Blades in the Dark is a... We all wear masks. Yeah, that does basically does have a different meaning in these post-COVID, post-2020 times, doesn't it? Maybe that name will change later. So, basically Blades in the Dark works by you build out a crew who is basically an organization, basically a loose organization of criminals who have lairs and abilities and things that they're known for, and then you kind of build out the scoundrels who are in that crew, or you flip that around, you build the scoundrels first and you build the crew. Up to you. And then you go on. You detail scores, and they go on the scores, and they get loot. They expand they get treasure known as coin. In this system, it kind of gets genericized down to coin, because it's the idea of the fact that money or treasures or things like that all have value of some sort, and it's easier to track that if you genericize it down to a single currency, so that you're not having to track. Yes, we've got we store a bunch of paintings. Those paintings are collectively worth 1 coin. They're a minor treasure, or they're really expensive. It's a really expensive, or a single statue might be 2 coin, because it's worth because it's a very expensive statue, or we're sought after by collectors and things like that. So it's the idea of the fact you build those out, and then you have all these different factions and people that the crew is interacting with. So if I'm building out a campaign like this, basically in a situation like this, I'm probably going to start with conversation with the players over what type of game they want to play. Blades in the Dark offers various different options for crew. The options for types of crews are smugglers, who basically transport contraband. There are hawkers, who basically deal in selling vices and things like that, whether that be alcohol, drugs, or other, even art or something else like that basically someone may want and it may not be readily available. You may want to play a cult, where basically all your members are devotees of some god, some forbidden god, or some lost god that basically that they have chosen to worship, real or not. It's up to you. When they're looking to bring others into it. Bravos, who are just mercenary thugs, killers. They're just basically we're hires. Basically, we are hired to break people and by doing so accomplish goals. They basically battles, exhortations, basically extortion, sabotage, smash and grab type stuff. Shadows, who are thieves and spies, so the burglars, espionage, robbery, sabotage operations. And last, of course, is assassins, who are there to basically be murderers for hire. Someone is bothering you, you're there to kill them. Simple as that. And so you sit down with your crew and you kind of talk to them over what type of game do we want to play? Is this basically, are you guys all going to be members of a cult? Are you guys all going to be smugglers? I did do a little pre-planning on this one. Talk to the people, and they decided that they wanted to. The most popular choice was shadows, so they're going to be thieves and spies. Basically, people are going to come to them, or they're going to go out and they're going to steal stuff, and that stuff may not necessarily just be physical. It might be information. It might be people. Basically, but they're going to tend to operate in the shadows. They're going to tend to basically go their own way. So, what I have, yes, basically, Mr. Burns like excellent. So normally we would sit down and we would go through and we'd talk about what their reputation was, which is basically if they're not nailed down, they probably didn't need it anyway. Stealing Soylent Green. I mean, kidnapping is a way of is a form of extortion and burglary, and it's probably something you'd want shadows to handle rather than bravos. Bravos, basically, okay, it's like. You want stuff without nails as well? So, you have, basically, what I am doing is normally you go through and you're like, okay, let's talk about your lair. What's the side where your lair is? Let's talk about your favorite operation. We'll talk about your upgrades and things like that. So, because it's a one-shot, basically, something I tend to do, basically, with one-shots and things like that is, if I'm not running it wholesale from an adventure, basically, let's piece it together from, there are a lot of great resources out there. Drive-through RPG, this actually, a lot of stuff on here basically came from, there was a bundle of holding that was on sale for once, that was, basically had a bunch of starting kits and things like that for Blades in the Dark. And they have a lot of great ideas, and basically the great part about role-playing is the fact that a lot of people have run this, a lot of people have great ideas, there's a lot of great communities out there. There's a really awesome Blades in the Dark Discord that's out there, which is an official Discord, where they have ideas and things like that, and you'll see bundles of information that will be sold out of that, where people have posted their ideas there, and basically have collaborated together to put together stuff for charity, things like that. Thinking one of the ones I grabbed for this was basically a charity bundling of a bunch of stuff that the Blades of the Dark Discord had come up with and posted that they were selling for charity on itch.io. And itch.io is a great place to look for stuff because itch.io is a lot of things on there are pay what you can. So they'll have a suggested price, but if you're someone who's like, hey, we scraped together the money to get the rules, and outside of that, we're not looking to spend a whole lot of money right now on role-playing stuff. Cool, pay what you can. And then the money went to a good charity. In this case, I think it was the Bailbound Project, for basically helping people out with cash bail. But in any case, so I love grabbing all those different ideas, and basically one of the things that I grabbed, this came from Drive-Through RPG, is that there are cards, basically that basically are kind of quick starts for crews and characters and things like that. And so they divide it up by different. Basically, you grab a bunch of them, and you can either randomly select some, or you can look through them, and they give you good ideas and things like that. But it gives you a good starting point for. Basically, it's not basically this isn't plagiarism. Basically, you should give credit when credit is due. This, for example, is the Blades of the Dark character cards, which are. I need to remember who that basically. The Cruise, which is by. Does have a. I love when they don't have basically they don't give me. But these are decks which are available. They are linked to you from the bladesofthedark.com website. They are available on Drive Through RPG. If you look through, basically they're called Blades in the Deck. You can see that there, Blades in the Deck. And they're available either basically print on demand, so you can have them printed off like this, or you can get the PDF form, which looks a little bit more like this. So you can see the fact that this is the deck I'm looking at. Basically, it's in print form, so you could just get the PDF and print it off yourself. So you can see that you can get the bring my finger in so you can actually that run. Basically, you can see over there. Basically, there's the deck, the cards. You can print them off and either use your own card stock or do whatever. Basically, do whichever. So. Basically, I want to build the crew. So the first thing I want to do to build this game out is I'm going to start with a crew, and then I'm going to put together that crew, and then basically use that to generate ideas. So I look through this deck here, and basically the one that basically I'm like, okay, basically one of these has an interesting layer description on it. And layers are where the crews are based off of. Think every think every kind of criminal hideout, every criminal movie, things like that, where they all have a layer that they come back to. That would likely be a location. But basically building the crew out, I'm going to build the crew out as a tag, because I'm going to want to be able to tag things as belonging to the crew, because the crew is going to essentially own a bunch of different locations. Characters are going to belong to the crew. If I create rival crews, I'm going to want them to also be in here as well. So let's go ahead and we'll start basically. We'll just call this basically Shadow Crew. We'll call this Player Crew, and then we'll rename it later. When we actually get a name for it. And if any of the players are in the chat, or anybody in the chat who's basically wanting to chime in, basically as I describe this more, it comes up with a good name for it, feel free. The Players Crew. So, basically I pulled this out, and I looked at it, and I went, okay, this one sounds interesting. So they're the Shadow Crew type. Their initial reputation is daring. I can't spell. It's cool. Basically, their lair, and this is what basically kind of made me went, oh, okay, this sounds interesting. They have backstage rooms. I can't write, rather. I can talk just fine. At the Imperial Liberation Crew. Basically, entries concealed by set pieces in storage. So they're a crew to they operate out of they operate out the back of a theater. So maybe are they all actors? Basically, so you're gonna be like, okay, are they all? This is kind of an interesting thing. Are they all actors in the theater, or are they sneaking in? Do they have friends who are in the theater which are letting them in, and that's how they got this lair? So basically, it gives you an interesting hook. Kind of, it reminds me of one I've liked from Pathfinder 2, the circus hook, which gave everybody a neat hook to. Because again, you have techies, you have roadies, you have actors, you have all those different things. Special effects people. Could basically, it gives you a good place to kind of hang some various different things. Give people a cover, which is important for a shadow type crew. Their favorite operation is burglary, which is, I like how they define it as theft by breaking and entering. Cool. Their special ability is synchronized, which makes sense for a crew, basically for a group that could be working together, especially in an acting type thing, basically doing things basically all basically together would make sense. During a group action, count multiple 6 results from different rolls as a critical success. And of course, I'm doing that, but I can also just as easily, because we do have Blades in the Dark for creation, this special abilities. So I could make that, and then do it this way. And what that lets me do is the fact that this is now a link. Basically, the Blades in the Dark does essentially have, basically has a SRD, which is available online. So we're linked. Basically, I built this index out. So basically, if I clicked on that link, it will take me to that page where all of the crew's special abilities are described. So now when I'm looking at this page, I can just look at it. Basically, if I need to remember what synchronized is rather than spelling it out, I could just click on that link. This one has crew upgrades. Basically, they take an elite cohort, which again makes sense. They probably have a crew of people who are working with them in the theater. They are independent and principled, which again makes sense. So basically, we have this group of basically this group of thieves who operate out of a theater, who are basically maybe involved in the theater, or basically maybe they want to say the theater is, maybe it's an abandoned theater, something like that. Up to them how they want to work it. Basically, so now we've got some interesting ideas. Now basically, so these are all people who maybe have some acting ability, things like that. Maybe one of the characters is an actor. It also provides a great cover for operations they might be pulling off. Basically, maybe do they use the fact that they're actors to get into areas? Do they use the fact that they are basically by breaking and entering, or maybe do they get into it by other means, by basically performing shows or things like that, private shows for rich patrons and things like that, and that allows them to get into places they normally wouldn't, or find out information they normally wouldn't. Basically, ushers and things like that throughout the theater. Maybe they overhear things that basically the usher who is minding the usher or bartender who is minding the box seats in the theater. Maybe they're privy to something they shouldn't. So let's go ahead and save that. So we've got that crew. So basically now I've created the crew. Basically we've got takes for characters and things like that. And again, normally you would work with the players, but maybe I also have, oops, I forgot something. Going back. Basically, one last step to crew creation. I'm kind of doing this at a high level. Like, normally each of these is its own step. Basically, picking your reputation, picking your lair. The other step is that you get to pick relationships as well. Which have their own cards in this set as well. Basically, you have a bunch of cards which are the relationship cards, and you could use that to randomly kind of pull stuff out. So you could be like, why are basically, so you could be like, oh, okay, these people are basically, they are friends or enemies with the blue coats, basically, or maybe they're friends or enemies with the lamplighters, the path of shadows, and things like that. And so you would use those to build out their basically what relationships do they have with these. I'm just actually going to pull up the crew section here. There was a page I was on, I just had it, and then I skipped off of it. Listen to this classical music while I flip pages. Crew creation summary, there it is. Let's get assigned crew upgrades. Your crew has 2 upgrades pre-selected. Choose 2 more. If your crew has a cohort, basically follow that. One faction helped you get an upgrade. Basically take a faction. Basically take a basically take a +1 status with them, or spend 1 coin and +2 status. One faction was harmed when you made an upgrade, and so you're dealing with basically the elite crew basically counts as 2 upgrades, which is why basically the elite cohort essentially counts as 2 upgrades. Which is why this crew only has 1 upgrade here. And so the answer is basically, so who did we screw over to get this to get this cohort with us, basically. So we have relationships. So we bumped someone's elbows, or we upset somebody when we got these, or we hired these from people, and those people they helped us. So the question is, of course, who helped us with this, and who doesn't like us. So there are lots of different organizations, and so if you're like, oh, I don't have time for this, you can just shuffle the deck and then pull some out, and then base them on that. So basically, with this one, here's one that I kind of like for for this group. It is race and you can kind of see that race and citizenry night market. The wraiths are masked thieves and spies targeting the wealthy and communicating with sign language. That feels like that those would likely be a good ally group for our groups of spies here. And then basically our enemy would be obviously wealthy and powerful elite, without aristocratic titles. Those would likely be someone in that group probably had a theater somewhere out there. Had a theater, and we kind of split off from them, creating our own theater. Maybe that's why it is, or maybe it's just a volunteer fire department. And so maybe we split off from them, or maybe let's see. Or it could be someone else who is hoping to also put together a group of actors and things like that. And someone else is trying to open the theater, and we stole their actors out from underneath them. So that's not how you spell citizenry. Let's try that again. I'm looking at it on the card, and my brain is still going, I don't care what you're looking at. That's not how we're going to spell things the way we want to spell things. Like, even though I'm looking at that, I'm like, that's correct. My brain is still like, no, that can't be right. So we'll go ahead and do that. So now we've created the crew out. The next thing is going to be, okay, how do we plan this? How do we want to plan this adventure out? How do we want to, what are we going to do with this group? And so let's go looking for ideas, as it were. So how do I go looking for ideas? So we've got the crew deck, and so we could. There's another deck that is called the heist deck. Basically, it gives you examples. It's rotated funny because they printed this PDF slightly weird. So they go through and they basically they give you out example heists and things like that. So I was looking through here and I'm like, okay, so what type of let's see, what type of heist do I want to basically do this for a one shot? Again, normally you'd have a little bit more, basically a little bit more planning with the players and things like that. But for here, I'm like, okay, let's at least start off with basically, let's go through here and try to get some ideas, because for a one shot, I'm probably going to want to present them with something and then let them go from there. I don't want to take away all agency from them, but I do want to, basically, I want to give them a solid lead so that they can quickly get in, understand, play the system, enjoy it, and then make the decision, oh, hey, this is fun, let's keep doing this. Or they're going to come away from this going, okay, this system isn't really our thing, or maybe, okay, this is an interesting system, but if I wanted to do it, I want to do it with a different crew. Basically, we would build the crew out this way. Maybe they don't continue with this, but maybe they decide to spin off and we'll do something different. So looking through basically some of these items here, basically, so they have some targets for the heists, which are, so you've got some signet rings, a ghost key, a tea set, a mask. Basically, they've got the Lament, Emerald Well, Leviathan's Eye. You may have already guessed, given the title I gave this campaign, that one of these kind of stood out to me, and that was the mask. Was basically like masks. Basically, I mean, it makes sense. It thematically fits with theater. Anytime you volunteer. Yeah. You're not wrong, Wolfmom. So I like the idea of this mask. Let me zoom in a little bit on this mask, assuming I can find. I love it when Adobe randomly changes everything, so I'm forced to play the game of where's my controls now? Like, for example, where's it? We'll just do it this way. It'll work. Forgive my mouse is being slightly. So I like this mask. Basically, silvery face mask is the word Ekatheron etched along its inner edge. When the word is spoken, the personality of the one touching the mask is pulled into it. The personality that was in the mask goes in the body. If the one in the body doesn't touch the mask once a week, madness threatens. And this sounds like basically this is an interesting mask, basically, especially for a theater group or something like that, or for people who are wanting to disguise themselves or impersonate people. This is the ultimate tool. You could literally put yourself in someone else's body, but then of course it offers some questions and things like that, like A, whose personality is in the mask to start with, B, if you are using the mask to shuffle personalities around so that you can basically use it to sneak into some place with somebody else's body, what are you doing with your personality? Basically, what's happening to your body and the original personality of your body? Are you sticking that personality just in the mask and leaving it there? Or are you sticking that personality into into your body and keeping your body tied up? What's happening to your body while you're using that? And they of course ask some additional fun questions like, is there someone the mask needs rescuing? Was the mask used to cheat death? And so it's an interesting artifact that it's something that could very definitely be used to be the start of it's a great target for our first heist, because it has obvious worth and you can come up with obvious reasons why the group might want to get it. But then it offers some interesting future campaigns that can be built off of it and around it. So I love that. I love that idea. of what basically let's base something around that. So okay, so let's go ahead and create that as an item in our game here. Let's switch back to planning view here. So okay, let's create a new item. Chaser mask. Spell correctly. They give it the subtitle of Weird Artifact. Let's just go ahead and grab that text. They did a good job with it. Of course, I say let's grab that text, but they instead chose to make it an image because they printed it out for a card, so they wanted it to look alright. So I'm going to have to type it in. That's not the correct. It's fold into it. And this threat. Okay. So now we have a target for a heist. Basically something to be out there. And then basically so now we need to look and basically figure out. So we've got some ideas. Basically we've got this theater troupe, or basically or people working out of a theater. They're going after a mask. So what type of heist do we want to make? Basically, what type of heist do we want to actually make here? And basically, we could look at those cards, and those cards give you examples of targets and basically obstacles, and basically in contacts who could be offering that. It's like, okay, all right, but basically, it feels like this really needs. We kind of want this one. We'll base this around a location. So let's flip back to our all little starting guides that we have here. And so I would flipping through these, and basically you look through them and you're like, okay, there's some obstacles. What's jumping out at us? There's a map of the Imperial capital. Basically the Imperial Theater is said to be like across the river because it's going to be near probably where the Imperial capital is. So it's probably around there. But where is there we go. One of the things I was talking about is this bundle here. Underground Maps and Passkeys. This is a Blades in the Dark charity bundle. I stumbled across it because I was trying to figure out basically where the Imperial Theater would be located. And I saw that this guide was out there that talks about basically the Imperial Theater. It gives kind of a location, gives some names for some plays, and I'm like, okay, that's some useful information. I might as well buy it because it's an interesting guide, basically, and hey, it supports charity. So I'm looking through this, and it gives you some cool stuff. And it's always great with these things that even if you're not building a one shot, if you're building a campaign, it's always great to look at these things to give you a hint of an idea, to give you something to push. Basically, whether it's the mask idea from the cards or something like that. Basically, it's always as a GM. It isn't plagiarism to look at a bunch of different sources and basically look for ideas, because it's kind of like the game mechanic rule in terms of you can copyright art and things like that, but you can't copyright mechanics. And so the idea, basically the mechanics of Romeo and Juliet, you can't. Basically aren't copyrightable. No one's going to sue you if you have a set of star-crossed lovers who show up in your game or book or whatever, because that is basically tropes are out there. Basically, TV tropes is out there, and it's actually as much as it is basically as much as it is kind of poking fun at the idea. It kind of helps in terms of being like building blocks for things. You're like, oh, I like this idea based here, but I'm also going to add this twist to it. I'm going to put it in this kind of setting, and I'm going to basically you can bury things under layers of stuff, and then what you end up with is you're like, oh yeah, I started off with this idea of it's Romeo and Juliet but in space, and then you end up with something completely different. I mean, Star Wars, of course, is a classic example of that, where George Lucas loved going through, loved watching a lot of those old samurai movies and things like that. And so, basically, you can there's definitely a difference. You can obviously take it too far. You look at it, you're like, okay, you can see where George Lucas grabbed a bunch of, basically kind of shamelessly grabbed a whole bunch of stuff from a bunch of different places and shoved it into his movie, and then changed it up and added other stuff on top of it until it got mostly unrecognizable. And then, but of course, you have on the flip side, you can have stuff like Zack Snyder doing stuff similar with his Rebel Moon. Zack Snyder has basically done something similar with Seven Samurai, is the one that Rebel Moon is based off of. And you can take or leave what you're doing there, but no one is going to be like, no, Zack Snyder has just plagiarized basically Seven Samurai. They're gonna be like, okay, he took a little bit too much. This is just Seven Samurai with a different paint job on it, and he needed to add more of the other stuff. But that's a great idea. Basically, as a GM, always be out there looking at other sources. Basically, get inspiration from other places. Get inspiration from anime. Get inspiration from TV shows. Get inspiration from the books you're reading. Or go through a lot of these examples, basically these little short snippets that are out there, and pull parts of them into your game to see with different things out to Magnificent Seven. That's an example of doing it well, where it is pretty much the same thing, but they've added enough of their own thing to it. Take a drink. And so, a Seven Samurai based campaign would be a really interesting kind of RPG thing that you could bring in. I think example ones I have in Lore Link is, I want to take a paladins only seven samurai, 7 paladins, and then you could build from there. But it's basically the idea of the fact that you're like, okay, basically, so you build these things out there, so you look through things like this, and you read through them, and you go, okay, what's an interesting idea that's in here? And I was flipping through here, and came across, where is it? There we go. A Night at the Opera, which, of course, first captures my attention because it's a really great Marx Brothers movie. If you haven't watched it, definitely watch A Night at the Opera. I doubt that it has any inspiration for this. This is more taking, I think, from Phantom of the Opera than Night at the Opera. But it's the idea of the fact that there is a abandoned theater out there it used to be called The Curtain. It has basically parts of it are now being used as a charity soup kitchen. And it, of course, because this is Duskfall, because like remember the thing at the beginning when we said that everything basically that this was a haunted Victorian city. The town is really haunted. Like some kind of cataclysm happened that broke the way that the spirit world works, and so bodies don't die anymore in normal ways. Basically, people die, but they become ghosts. If not, basically, given enough time, they will become ghosts. And so places will have ghosts and things like that, where the idea of the fact is you have people who are running around as ghosts, you have places which are running around as ghosts, and so you end up with this interesting thing. So they're talking about, okay, there's this old theater, there are all these different problems that could happen there. So it's like, okay, so where would it make sense to keep where would it make sense to keep a treasure like basically our mask that we talked about? Basically, a mask in a theater would make sense, and a mask that could ship people's personalities would be an interesting thing to be in a theater. So why don't we go ahead and let's go back to my switch views. No, I have buttons for this, and I really should just actually use buttons to click buttons. Look at that. I could just push a button and things happen. And so let's go ahead and create that location. So first, of course, I'm going to break this down a little bit just so I can add more to it, because our locations are built in a hierarchy type system. And so we keep basically, you can build them out in a hierarchy type system. And this allows you to build things basically from the top down. I pushed the button, elevator, go down the hole. Basically, you push things, and they. Now I have that Tiny Toons go down the whole thing running in the back of my head. Thank you, Tony. So we build things top down, and so that you can build a specific information about a place at one level and then have it copy down to everything underneath it. So information I want to store about Duskfall, I can store up here. So basically, I can put the and I can have a biscuit. Okay, lady, love you. Bye bye. That's not Tiny Toons. That's not Tiny Toons. That's Animaniacs. You're straying from your source material, sir. I mean, it's all they played back to back, but you're just going to have all those. Basically, next you're going to say hello, nurse, or I don't know. Hysteria actually has a quote that would be basically a good sound quote that basically encompass the series for those 20 people who remember Hysteria, which was one of the similar type of shows during that time period. I know Wolf Mom remembers that, but so basically in terms of top-down stuff, so children description, so basically things I'm going to record in here are things which are important to every location in the city. So, for example, one of the most important facts about Duskfall is the fact that where is the exact description of that? It is the let's see. I saw it just the other day. Oh well, in any case, I will use generic words and then grab specific ones here in a bit. But every time someone dies in Duskfall, that caption I can't look up. Grey Clerks, Splendors, Spirit Wardens. Death Bells, that's what it is. Every time someone dies in Duskfall, the death bell rings, signaling to the Spirit Wardens. Which exposed. So basically, it's an interesting, basically, an interesting twist because again, basically, the city is incredibly haunted to the point that basically, if you leave a body of basically any body that basically left alone for long enough, will eventually the spirit will separate from the body and will start haunting that location with aggressive effect. However, basically, if you burn the body in electroplasmic, yes, electroplasmic, not ectoplasmic, electroplasmic flame, that will basically incinerate the body and the spirit and prevent the ghost from wandering the area. So there is a group of basically there is a secretive group known as the Spirit Wardens, who basically go around the city basically, and there is a set of bells that have been basically whenever someone dies, they are Death Seeker crows start circling the area, and the Spirit Wardens start searching for the body to hopefully grab the body and then dispose of it as soon as possible. Obviously, once the Spirit Wardens get involved over a dead body, the Blue Coats, the name for the policing organization, Electroplasmic, it is, I think it's Electro. Where is the exact name? I think it's definitely Electro. I think it may be Electroplasmic. More later, but in any case, there is basically there are those. Basically, there are those going around. So basically, it adds that just a little bit more of a basically a clock to the game. To 210. That's the page I'm looking for. Electroplasm, PLASM. So electroplasmic is the correct word. The energetic residue distilled from ghosts and Leviathan blood, who are giant demons that lurk out in the wastes, and they basically in the wastes or in the void sea. So basically, I want to have this information here so that I'm reminded of it wherever I am, but I don't necessarily want to copy this down to every location. So that's what I'm going to use the child description for. So. Yeah, it's always interesting basically when you this is one of the reasons why it's great to get out and try basically different systems and things like that, because they offer interesting twists and things like that. And then you get to add your own to it. So basically you go from so that is the name of that. Then you have districts, which are underneath that. So you have richer districts and poorer districts. And so you're like, okay, so what district does this? So it's it's obviously not going to be a really wealthy district because of the fact that it's got an abandoned theater in it, but you want it to be moderately wealthy because it needs to have at one point supported at one point having supported a rich theater. And so looking through the descriptions, I look at 6 towers, a formerly rich district, now worn down and dilapidated. That's perfect. So let's go ahead and put this in 6 towers. And actually, the Arms of the Weeping Lady is stated to be in that district already, so cool. So basically, so I can have 6 districts, so I can have a centuries to a pale shadow. I can have more information here about places and things like that. But basically, all the districts have traits in this game, which talk about basically about how security and safety. 1. Influence 2. Influence 3. So, basically, now that I'm putting that in there, that way any buildings I create in this district, I now can see what the general traits for the district are. And I'll have that in, basically I'll have that there. And then so, if I want to create the name where our adventure takes place, which is the Curtain, which is our so we go ahead and save that out. Basically, if I wanted to have it be anything about what basically what could be going on inside of here, I could save those there. So basically there's our breakdown for basically where this is going to take place. So now basically I have all of this set up, so now I can build more into the Curtain or the 6 towers and things like that, and I can use the Curtain when I'm talking about event planning and things like that. And I can tag it in locations. So we're definitely building this world out here. We're getting ideas. And so when I was looking through that, one of the things they talk about is the Spirit Wardens basically don't like ghosts, which is the organization we're talking about, who are dedicated to giving bodies and things like that. And so a building like this, which is home to a whole bunch of ghosts, obviously the Spirit Wardens are going to attempt to clean it up or something like that. And so one of the things they suggest is that if you're trying to hold a heist in this building, one of the problems could be that the Spirit Wardens show up with heavier firepower in order to cleanse the place, and they don't particularly want anybody basically interfering with them, and so they're a problem that can occur during any heists that take place here. And so what that got me thinking is, okay, so the spirit, basically there's a spirit hunt going. Basically they're coming in. They're going to cleanse cleanse the place, and so that provides the perfect opportunity for anything. Basically, maybe they normally have the place cordoned off. Maybe normally these Spirit Wardens have a perimeter set up around this building, and your contact has learned that this item, the mask, is in there and can be taken, and that's when they're going to burn the building down, spirit burn the building down. Security will be later, because obviously they'll pull their people back and they won't have their people there, and so you'll have a window of opportunity to get into the building and loot the place, possibly getting this mask out of it but you also have the timer ticking down of basically the place getting burned down. And so that gives you basically, so now we have basically the reason for their going in there, their opportunity to get in there, but it's still up basically. So we provided the sandbox opportunity, and with Blades in the Dark, we're going to want to get a little bit more detailed. Basically, what I will likely do, since we're approaching time here, is I will off camera get a little bit more detailed over different approaches and things like that, in terms of how this all could plan out, various different approaches I think the players could take, because Blades in the Dark essentially, rather than, we've all had those situations where the players have been set up as basically been given a situation kind of like this one, and you will spend an entire 4-hour time period just planning out to the minute detail of how they're going to get into this building. Blades in the Dark says, that's great and all, but that's way too much effort for the type of game we want to run. Instead, what we're going to do is the players are going to give the bare minimum of a plan. They're going to say, we want to do X or Y, or basically we want to do this type of plan. And actually, give me a second. I go back out to all of my campaigns out here. Let's see here. Which one was it? A simple score. There we go. Which is another one I wrote for basically their Blades in the Dark one I wrote. And so basically they set up you set up what type of plan you want, and the players decide we're gonna go with a assault plan, a deception plan, an occult plan, a social plan, a stealth plan, or maybe we're hitting some kind of transportation type plan. And that's some of these plans will work for some situations, some of them won't. For example, basically you may be like, well, how does a transportation plan work for anything where it's not transport? Well, maybe it's a plan that basically you're like, okay, we're going, basically you declare that, oh, they're going to get everything out of the opera house, and we're going to hit them when they transport it from point A to point B. Okay, so now it's a kind of a transport type plan. And you break it down, basically, or we need to transport it. Basically, we're going to get it from there to there. And basically, but sometimes it just doesn't work. Maybe it's like, okay, we need to take care of somebody at it, basically who's meeting at a ball. Transport doesn't necessarily work for that, but some of the other plans will, like stealth or occult or deception or assault. So you tell your players, basically you sit down like, okay, give me what's the bare bones type of plan that you're going to go with, and you start the plan out from there, and then you start in medias res. What it is basically you start the plan from the point where things start to go wrong slightly. Basically, you end up with a roll, and that roll determines essentially what the situation is at the start of the scenario. So if you roll poorly on that, maybe we get it. Maybe we come in when things start to go wrong on the with the breaking in. You were trying to hop across rooftops to get to the building to go in through a window, and maybe you've been spotted on a roof, or maybe somebody slipped on a roof, and that's where we start from. If because something went wrong, or maybe we start from a good. You start with a good perception, a good situation. And you're like, okay, we've gotten a better advantage over what we're looking at here, and so we can see into the building. You can see these things. You can see these things going on. But it's the idea of the fact that you start basically immediately into the game. You don't let the players sit there and try to break down every detail, and instead you give the players the ability to backwards, basically retroactively determine plans and things like that. One of the spider's ability, what the mastermind's ability is, you could be like, I knew this was going to happen, and so I gave this player this, or told them to look out for this. And even though that they're not in that scene necessarily, maybe the group is split when they got inside, they're like, hey, basically, I knew the fact that the stairs were going to be, basically have problems, and so I told them to wrap bandages around their legs in case they stepped through a step, and it would have ripped them up. It would rip them up their legs, and so they would be, or I gave them that advice, and so they're more cautious on the stairs, so they can react better to one of the stairs collapsing, or the flashlights at the end of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's the idea of the fact that basically you've set things up in advance, so that basically things will go that way, but you're enabling the players the adventure to feel more epic in scope, more well planned out in scope, by allowing them to retroactively say, of course we would have been ready for that. We're thieves. This is our job. And while we as the player may not have expected, because of dice rolls or because of because of the situation, we would have planned, basically the professionals that we are, we would have planned for that. We would have dealt with that. And so we have ways of mitigating those risks. Not that it isn't free. Basically, it costs your players stress and things like that. But it gives you it lets your player, it lets you tell more of the story that you want to tell, and less of the story of just, well, I guess even though I'm really good at my job, we got caught off guard by this, and so now we're done. Now, from the flip side, from the GM side, because of the fact that I'm just setting this up, maybe I don't necessarily know which plan they're going to pick. And so that means I need to react on the fly. And that might be the fact that might mean the fact that if I want to really plan things out, I will come in here and be like, okay, here's the general thing, and then I'm going to basically come up with just some simple, basically, what are some complications for a violent approach. Um, Basically, so if they're trying to if they're violently assaulting a place, how long before the police arrive? Clocks are things that you set up in the game, which are visible to the players, and the GM sets up that's visible to the players, which basically it can be failures can advance clocks. So yes, you can break into, basically you're going to break into the building, and basically you roll your lock picking, and you get a mediocre result. Basically, you get a 4 or a 5 as opposed to a 6, which is 6s are the only clear successes. 4 or 5s are complicated successes. So you're like, oh, you succeeded, but here's the complication. It takes you a little bit more time. I'm going to put another tick in the cops are showing up because of the fight. There's a clock that you all can see, and so you can all see that, and so it ramps up. Basically, you can rent it up. And you can also, basically, you can build in other complications. You're like, okay, so what are the complications that a violent facial approach could have? And you can list some of them here so that you can be... this is not really classical pretzel. But I'm slowly hearing this EDM in my headphones, and I'm like, wait, what? It kind of works. But that's good. So you can set up some of your planning to kind of, yeah, it's not bad. But you're kind of dealing with, basically, you're doing a little bit of planning on those things so that you have these things, kind of set up basically in advance, so that when your players pick it, you have some idea of what you can do with it. And so what I'm likely going to do before the next session is I'm going to start to set up some of those things. I'm going to start to set up, okay, what are the complications that could occur during this? I'm going to set up who the contact is and things like that. And then when we come back next week, I'm going to flesh those things out. I'm going to put more details to them, and so that I have things which are prepared for basically it's the idea of the fact that I want this to be a sandbox, but that basically creating sandbox and thinking video games, that means you have to do a lot of work in building the environment and basically preparing for possibilities. Otherwise, what you end up with is just a bunch of invisible walls in your sandbox, essentially, which is you have to tell your players, you can't go down there, I have nothing prepared for that. I can't handle you deciding to punch people, I don't have a plan for that. You want this, you're like, okay, I want to build enough of the environment, things like that, that I have an idea of what's going on in a situation so that I can react appropriately to building it out. And that's what I'm going to do with Lorelink, is I'm going to build all these things in here, and then basically what I'm probably going to do next time is I'm going to start doing timelines, where I'm going to start putting all of the events I've created in a row. I'll be like, okay, how does all of this stuff link together? I'm going to create a session, which is going to give me easy access to all the things I've created for this session and list them all out. I'm going to build out some more characters and things like that, so that I have basically contacts and targets and things like that, so I have an idea of what the characters are up against. And basically, I can also flesh out the player characters as well, so basically we have something for the one-shot players to start with, so we don't spend a bunch of time in character creation, things like that. Again, this is a one-shot, which means you're ending up with a slightly different situation. You're kind of combining session 0 and the entire campaign into one session, so there's a little bit of planning which needs to take place up front. All right, so all of that to say, That is how we will end this session. Basically, this planning session. So, I'm gonna switch to the screen, but I'm still going to be talking. Basically because we are doing so we are LoreLink. What basically all the software you saw me using is our online GM toolkit. If this stuff if this is interesting to you and you enjoyed what you have seen here, please do give us a follow here on social media, on is this actually working? It should work. Okay. Here on Twitch TV or here on social media. And basically because we are doing a push for affiliate. No wonder it's set to like 10,000 milliseconds for that. Let's bring that down a little bit. And so what that means is the fact that we're trying to improve our social media presence because we want to be seen. We're creating this product not just for ourselves. We're creating this product for a community. And so we want to be seen as part of the community. So we want to be running games. We want to be showing off the things, showing people how the system gets used, so that people can understand. Okay, what are these people coming at? These are some of their ideas. And so we want to build a rapport, those sort of things. And so that's why we're making the push for affiliate while we're doing early access, which is something else that we're doing. We are running. We're doing early access, which means we have people currently using the system, giving us feedback, suggestions. We're just running a poll in our Discord, right? Just recently, where we're getting feedback on, okay, what features should we be working on next? Where should we be focusing on stuff? Where does this type of tool need to go in order to be the most useful? So that's what we're looking for our engagement with the community, because again, GMing is a social experience. They have GM-less games, and even those are a conversation between you and whoever wrote the adventure, whoever wrote the game. Even in that, there's still social aspects, and so we want to make sure that extends into we can't build these things in a vacuum. So we're wanting to build build these things out. So follow us online, go to our website. You can also sign up for our website to our newsletter, which if you sign up here for the next week or so, you'll get the January newsletter, which will be a great place to start, because we use the January newsletter to talk about what we've done in the past year and where we're planning on doing in the next 12 months. So it's a great place to hop on and find out some things. And we only send out one newsletter a month. Maybe another couple of little email things if we're doing something special that we want something to know about. But on average, you're getting one, maybe 1.25 emails a month. Yes, a quarter email. Because we understand you're busy. We don't need to flood your inboxes with a bunch of random information. If you want but it's a great way of getting information from us on a regular basis that summarizes it. If you're like, hey, I don't do social media because social media is terrifying. I understand. It's kind of a haunting place out there. But in any case, it's a great way to follow on that. And of course, following us here on Twitch TV, will let you know when we go live, which will get I'm just going to click on this and tell it to advance again, because sure, why not? And so if you follow us here, that allows helps push us towards affiliate, which allows us to get cooler things to our community. And it also lets you know when we're doing interesting stuff. Not terrifying, terrible. Okay, you're not wrong. And so, when we run games and things like that, you can also catch our schedules and things like that. For when we'll be doing streaming, will be located here. So, all that to say, January 2024 is an interesting month. Thank you all for listening, whether you are lurking or talking in the chat. We appreciate that. We understand both perspectives. If you're watching this later on YouTube, awesome. Glad you could catch this, even if you're catching us later. That's good. Glad to have you there. If you watched part of this and you want to catch the rest of it, you can check out the video on YouTube as well. Hi, random sound effect. That was cool. I know where that sound effect comes from. Okay. In any case, I am basically with all of that. Thank you for showing. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you all next week. Monday is our next stream. Monday at 4:30, I believe. Good night.